Tracy with the Kentucky Handcrafted. Out another video on the Prusik, on how to manually tie it without having to use a Prusik loop. Today we're going to look at the ridgeline and tarp. I'm going to show you how I have my tarp set up and how I go about tying the Prusik without using a Prusik loop. I'll show you that as well so that you'll have a comparison. Either way works, either way's right. You just have to figure out what's best for you. So let's get started. So let me move this Prusik out of the way. Most people start with some type of Prusik loop, and they'll do 1, 2, 3 loops, and then they will dress it up real neat. Something like that. And then they will attach this to the edge of the tarp, and then this is what moves and holds. And if it ever gets too tight to where you can't move it, all you have to do is just take this section here, loosen it up a little bit, and then it slides. If you need to tighten it back up, once you put pressure on it, it'll tighten up. So we are going to tie the Prusik instead of having the loop. So let's slide this out of the way. So to begin tying the Prusik, I'm going to first go over, and then I'm going to tie my loops. I'll do the traditional 3, so it'll be similar to the Prusik loop that we just saw. One, two, three, and you can see that I started looping away from my initial loop, my first loop over, my second, third. I go that way. Then I come across my first loop. This time I'm going to go under and come back, and I'm going to tie from outside to in. Here I went from inside to out. On my second stage I'm going to go from outside to in. So I'm going to come under, 1, 2, and 3, and then you just dress it up just like the Prusik loop that you use. Just have to get it out and make sure that these loops are not overlapping one another. Make sure they're good and dressed. And there you have it. You have the Prusik loop. I already have the other end tied, but if I need to move it, it moves and catches itself on down. Now this leaves an open loop, or an open cordage that I can actually tie stuff off of if I need to hang up anything. But that's it, that simple. So let me bring in the loop version versus the tied version. The tied version's on my left. You can see that they're identical. The only thing is, on the tied version, you just connect this to your corner of the tarp, and on the tied version, the initial cordage that comes out is tied to the corner. Now let's take another look at this without 3 loops. That's the traditional way, especially if you're using it to rappel and that type of scenarios, but we're looking at tarps. So I'm only going to do 2 loops and see if that will hold this tarp up. So again, initially I go from inside out. The second phase of it, I go from outside in. Get them all dressed up. And let's see if that will hold. Yeah. So 2 holds well. A lot of times what I do is I will do 2, and then on my second stage of it, I will only do 1 and bring that in. Again, dress everything up, and that typically is good enough to hold a tarp. So whether you tie the Prusik or use a Prusik loop, Either one of them works. One's not necessarily better than the other. For years, this is the way I did it. I kept Prusik loops just looped on my cordage that I was using for ridgeline, and they were just there, and I'd pull them out, connect them to my tarp, and good to go. But I changed from that to this, is just leaving a cordage, a length of cordage tied to the corners, and then I tie my Prusiks, usually 2 and 2, sometimes 2 and 1, mostly 2 and 2. 3 is overkill. You don't need it, and you'll be good to go. So there you have it. Whether you tie the Prusik or use the loop to configure the Prusik in your camping outfit or whatever you're using it for, figure out what works for you and use it. Sometimes the Prusik loop can't be used because of the way the rope has to run or get around something. That's what caused me to learn how to tie it, and once I started tying it, that's what I use anymore. I really don't use the loops anymore. So figure it out. Whatever works for you, great. Just get outdoors. If you find this video useful, please do me a favor and subscribe. It really helps me out. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these, not just how to tie the knots, but some practical uses of it, not just the Prusik. We're going to go through a series of them. So be sure and subscribe and hit that notification button so that whenever a new video comes out, you'll know it's out. You get to watch it. So here's a little bonus footage. I'm going to get rid of all this, tie the Prusik in real time without talking, and you can kind of see how quickly it goes. So I'm going to tie this in real time. You can kind of time it, see how long it takes. Even with me fumbling around, you'll see that it doesn't take all that long. So I'm only going to do 2 loops because that's typically what I do for tarps. If it's something like tying down my kayak or something, I will do 3 for added security, but for tarps I typically just do 2. Get them dressed up, done. And again, here's your extra cordage that you can hang stuff on. Thanks for watching.